Good afternoon and welcome to the News Roundup for Thursday, December 4, 2025. I'm Bill Thomas, and here's what's happening right now. Shocking revelations linking Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar to Minnesota's shocking billion-dollar fraud scheme. President Trump sending the National Guard to New Orleans following a personal request from the governor of Louisiana, and Communist China rapidly expanding their authoritarian surveillance network by constructing a number of electronic warfare facilities in the South Pacific. Also, after more than 5 years, the FBI finally arresting a suspect in D.C.'s January 6 pipe bomb case. And pro football star Travis Kelce, he makes a stunning confession to actor George Clooney, movie star George Clooney, concerning the status of his relationship with pop star Taylor Swift. All this and a bunch more coming up right now on the Big Roundup. We have a great deal to get to today, and we begin with more on the growing billion-dollar welfare fraud scandal, which is currently enveloping Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. With public outrage escalating dramatically, reports now revealing that Democratic squad member and far-left Congresswoman Ilhan Omar has a number of unquestionable ties to both the cowardly scheme itself as well as the people who actually perpetrated it. Now, to refresh your memory, the horrendous scam took place during the COVID-19 pandemic and involved a number of nonprofit organizations ostensibly created in Minnesota to feed the state's hungry school children. Instead, fraudsters, they skimmed the cash and used it to fund their lavish lifestyles. Reprehensible. According to the aforementioned reports, a great deal of the $1 billion ripoff took place in Omar's congressional district right under her nose. She herself introduced the bill, which allowed organizations to be reimbursed with taxpayer money for feeding kids and ultimately led to $250 million worth of theft. You know, even worse, the congressman personally knew several people who've been convicted for taking part in the scam and ripping off millions of dollars, including one of her own staff members. However, despite all the mounting evidence linking her directly to the perpetrators of the hoax, the Somali immigrant still claims she had no idea what was going on. As a result, critics are now accusing her of either being willfully ignorant, completely naive, or simply knowing and not really caring. You want more proof? How about this one? One local business owner was found guilty of stealing more than $12 million for serving phantom meals during the pandemic. He just happens to be the co-owner of the restaurant where Omar held her congressional victory party, and that was in 2018. She also hung out on a regular basis and was photographed often with another scammer who worked directly on her political campaigns, was a Democratic activist as well, and pocketed millions from this epic con job. Now, for her part, Omar has called the scheme reprehensible, and her team claims she never knew anything about it. Well, maybe. In the meantime, earlier this week, both Congress and the Treasury Department launched new investigations into whether or not Minnesota Governor Tim Walz could have done anything about it any time sooner. Final thought, this is the News Roundup Lowdown. Now, it's interesting to note that under the ever-watchful eye of the esteemed Congresswoman from Minnesota, the legendary Ilhan Omar, an enormous amount of taxpayer dollars, which were set aside to feed hungry children, it's been pilfered. Much like her fellow Democrat, the governor of the fine state of Minnesota, Tim Walz, the Timmer. Neither of them have done anything unsavory, underhanded, or unethical, and they had no knowledge of any wrongdoing. It's kind of like Schultze from that TV show Hogan's Heroes. They knew nothing.
I know nothing. Nothing.
If Madam Omar is going to claim ignorance, then at the very least she's incompetent and should step away from her job immediately and maybe hand over the reins to a low-level college kid who's out of class in Money Management 101 or ethics or political science or maybe underwater basket weaving, and he or she would easily do a superior job. Here's the bottom line. When millions and millions of dollars are set aside to provide food for needy children, and all that dough ends up in the hands of a bunch of ne'er-do-wells, then someone has to be held accountable. And as the representative of Minnesota's 5th Congressional District, that someone, it's the ill one, Ilhan Omar. Indictments, arrests, and convictions, but she's entirely innocent. Hey, producer Davey, it sounds like something we've never come across in Democrat politicking. Fraud and corruption. What are you thinking?
Yeah, Bill, look, clearly this congresswoman is connected to some really questionable people. Yeah. And even if she's not guilty, look, there's enough there to question her judgment and obscure whatever message she's trying to deliver.
Yeah, well, I take it a step further. I say don't blame Ilhan. Don't blame the Timber, and instead I say we put the blame on anybody who was goofy enough, dumb enough to vote for either of them. And by the way, if you have any thoughts, comments, anything on Governor Walz or Ms. Omar or anything else we yak about here on the program, drop us a note, and we're at newsroundup@gmail.com. That is an epic fail. Turning now to the great strides President Trump is making to restore law and order to our crime-riddled American cities. At the direct request of the Louisiana governor, 47 says he'll soon be deploying National Guard troops to help law enforcement deal with their ongoing problems in New Orleans. President says he's making the move because Governor Jeff Landry personally asked for federal assistance in controlling his state's out-of-control criminal activity, especially in the Big Easy. He also says those forces are going to be heading down there in the next couple of weeks and that they'll all be firmly in place to safeguard a number of the city's upcoming high-profile events, including college football bowl games, New Year's Eve, and, of course, the legendary Mardi Gras. In the meantime, the Trump administration has just launched a massive immigration crackdown in New Orleans, and they say their goal is to nab and arrest up to 5,000 violent offenders. Earlier this year, Governor Landry sending an official letter to the Trump administration formally requesting up to 1,000 National Guard members to help local law enforcement fight the violent crime, which is currently plaguing several of the largest cities in Louisiana. It's getting tough. However, not everyone's on board with the plan. Several local officials in New Orleans are flat out opposed to the move, with the city's incoming mayor accusing the Trump administration of politicizing public safety, not exactly, by targeting Democrat-led cities while ignoring other places where crime, as they say, is actually a bit worse. Final thought, and this is the News Roundup Lowdown. This really has less to do with Louisiana and more to do with a handful of blue states. Take California, Illinois, New York, also Tennessee, Maryland, and Oregon as well. Yeah, we'll get to that in just a bit. Hey, first up, though, Governor Landry, you are a bright guy, a brilliant leader, and a great American. Landry can clearly see that his Bayou state has some issues. They need additional resources to tend to a bunch of festering problems. And yeah, he's reached out to the Trump administration for a helping hand, and that help in the form of National Guard troops on the way to put the fix in. Now, what's it all mean? It means that the governor is putting the safety and the welfare of the fine citizens of his state well ahead of politics and doing all he can to make all of Louisiana safe for everybody. Elsewhere, there are some governors across the country who would sit idly by and watch violent crime, filth, drugs, gangs, homelessness, and more destroy their states rather than accept a helping hand from the White House. California's governor, that guy, Gavin Newsom. Illinois governor, the other guy, J.B. Pritzker, and that fine young lady, New York governor, Kathy Hochul, and all the rest. Look, refusing much-needed help from the federal government that's leading to the destruction of many of your city's big problems. And you're playing politics, simply ruining people's lives. Hi, Producer Davey. Federal government overstepping their authority or President Trump to the rescue? What say you, sir?
Well, Bill, I got to say, I think it's up to each individual state what they do and whether or not they want help. And if they don't, I say you got to stay out.
Perhaps. And I say this, any governor nationwide who would actually step up and reject help from the federal government to assist in cleaning up their crime-riddled big cities, their small ones too, they should be removed from office and forced to live in a bright orange tent in the middle of the worst part of the state, which they theoretically are in place to oversee. Our pivot now to an alarming development which is taking place right now in a strategic body of water known as the South China Sea. According to a frightening new analysis, the Chinese Communist regime is now constructing an extremely sophisticated intelligence network which covers the whole South Pacific, all with an eye on controlling the entire region. Now, the report shows that China is building a number of electronic war stations on a bunch of those man-made islands which they've already created to dominate the area's shipping lanes. Goes on to warn that the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, plans to use those modern facilities to support their state-of-the-art surveillance systems and therefore provide unparalleled intelligence coverage of every country in that particular region. Furthermore, the report says the CCP is preparing to use those outposts as a launching pad for their repressive military activities. It says China has already placed a large number of air bases, naval ports, and missile systems on those artificial islands, and that they're in the process of installing massive amounts of electronic jamming equipment there as well. It's only getting worse. Among the nearby countries directly impacted by these highly disturbing developments, you've got Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, also Indonesia, and more, including our ally, Australia. Final thought, this is the News Roundup Lowdown. It's beginning to feel like China is pushing buttons and making their presence well known all over the planet. They're looking, watching, and spying on large chunks of the world the same way they do at home. Now, for folks like you and I who are stateside, might not feel overly important right now, but in the not-too-distant future, when they're spotted off the coast of Los Angeles, my home base, or Texas, Florida, Washington State, the reality, it may hit each of us and hit us real hard. And right now, this guy, Admiral David Johnston, I know that fella, chief of the Australian Defence Force, he's saying that his military has deployed, check out this aircraft, it's amazing. It's a P-8 maritime patrol aircraft to monitor 4 Chinese naval ships in the Philippine Sea. He's on the job. In my estimation, China will expand operations and plant themselves in a number of strategic locations all over the globe. And some would argue that we should all be planning for inevitable conflict. Now, Producer Davey, in my mind, I think they're planning and they're plotting nonstop. And they're actually testing everybody's patience. What are you thinking?
Look, they're building out these man-made islands and planting their bases there in the middle of the sea, and they're not doing it for leisure, Bill.
Yeah.
They're planning for war there and around the world, and we all need to wise up before it's too late.
Yeah, they're not going to build hotels on those goofy little blow-up man-made islands. And China will continue, by the way, to support Russia. And once Russia gets what they want in terms of Ukraine and maybe more of Europe, watch China, Russia, North Korea. Watch the big alliance. They'll continue to grow. Factor in Iran, maybe India as well. Their global influence will increase, and the entire free world should watch their every move and very carefully. Now, some additional headlines we are keeping a very close watch on here in the News Roundup newsroom. And up first, Senate Minority Leader, that handsome fella, Chuck Schumer. He says that in order to keep health insurance premiums from skyrocketing for millions of Americans, Democrats are planning to force a vote next week on a bill to extend expiring Obamacare tax credits. It'll never pass. Meanwhile, a shocking new watchdog report is revealing extreme evidence of fraud in the Affordable Care Act. You think? Claiming that over the past couple of years, 90% of fake applicants were actually granted substantial subsidies without providing legitimate identification. Yeah, that's some great program. And moving along, after a 5-year investigation, the FBI finally arresting a suspect who allegedly planted pipe bombs near the U.S. Capitol on January 5th, 2021. Authorities saying the 30-year-old Virginia man, he's currently in federal custody and facing a number of charges, which include using an explosive device. Also in our nation's capital, the Trump administration renaming the former U.S. Institute of Peace after our current commander-in-chief. I know that guy. And moving forward, the organization to be called the Donald J. Trump Institute of Peace, with the State Department saying the new moniker is designed to reflect the greatest deal maker in our nation's history. Greatest deal maker. Davey, would you say he's a better deal maker than Monty Hall from TV's Let's Make a Deal?
No, Bill. Nobody's better than Monty Hall.
Nobody's better than Monty Hall. I'll take what's behind door number 2. All right, scooting along to the world of business and a quick peek at a couple of stories which are making hay in commerce, also in retail, and more. Leading off, the CEO of Delta Airlines says his company lost in the neighborhood, check this out, of 200 million clams as a result of the air traffic turmoil caused by our recent record-setting 43-day government shutdown. And I say this to Delta Airlines, send a bill in the amount of $200 million to Chuck Schumer. He's the genius behind the shutdown. Moving along, a cybersecurity expert now urging consumers to keep their eyes peeled for a growing number of holiday-related scams. He says, thanks to AI, criminals can now personalize their attacks by mimicking voices, sending out fake text messages, and creating fake online stores with phantom deals that are too good to be true. And speaking of the holiday season, a visit from the Grinch. A new study reveals this year far fewer Americans are planning to dish out their seasonal tip to service providers, folks like housekeepers and trash collectors, gardeners, even the mail carriers. Other folks getting no tip: the Sparklets water delivery guy, cable TV crew, and virtually anybody else with their hand extended looking for some of that holiday dough. And now a quick gander at a bit of rock and roll showbiz news, and we open up with a surprising revelation about one of the most famous celebrity couples in the world. Football player Travis Kelce claims now throughout the span of their entire 2.5-year relationship, he and his gal pal, pop star Taylor Swift, have never had a single argument. Kelce made the outrageous comment during a conversation with his new bud, George Clooney, who also swears he's never argued with his own wife, Amal. Well, yeah, but she's a lawyer. You don't argue with a lawyer because even when you're right, you're going to be wrong. Now, I say to both George Clooney and to Travis Kelce, if you're not arguing once in a while, I think you're doing something wrong. By the way, for Brother Kelce, look, be sure to keep things kind of nice with Swifty Cakes. She has a habit of writing brutal tell-all songs about the boys who break her heart, so watch your step. And producer Davey, did the Swift one ever write a song about you?
Well, I can't say that she has, Bill. I've never even met her.
Oh, we'll take her out for a pizza. By next week, you'll be a subject of a #1 hit song. And turning now to the silver screen, a popular TV show called Actors on Actors has just announced their star-studded lineup for the next season, and among the pairings of famous performers who'll be dishing on the nuances of their craft with each other. You got Adam Sandler and Ariana Grande, also Julia Roberts and Sean Penn, Jennifer Lawrence, The Rock as well, and a whole bunch more. Actors on Actors, the greatest entertainment show in the history of television. However, I've never heard of it until right now, and I've never seen one episode, and I'm not going to watch it either. In any event, most TV shows, they last 4, maybe 5 seasons. This one is on season 23, so it's got legs, and all the cool kids, all the big stars are going to be featured on it. So, sounds even more intriguing, that TV show, Mr. Belvedere. And producer Davey, where do I catch that show?
Mr. Belvedere, Bill?
Oh, the other one, the new one. Yeah, the new one.
I think you could check that out on CNN coming up this year.
Give it one shot. All right. Now, while we're on the subject of acting, the great Leo DiCaprio. Leo lifting the curtain and revealing his next monumental movie project. And this one's a doozy. Leo confirming that he's going to be taking a plum role in legendary director Michael Mann's long-awaited crime sequel, Heat 2. You may recall the original classic, starring a couple of little-known actors named Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, and more. And unfortunately, however, DiCaprio now says he will not be making a cameo in Brad Pitt's new Netflix series, Booth. What's it called, Davey? Is it Cliff Booth or Booth?
Well, it's called Cliff Booth, Bill.
Okay. DiCaprio is the real deal, by the way. Never makes a dud, and all of his movies are absolutely awesome. Now, producer Davey, is this the guy who was in the boat accident movie, Poseidon something or other, and he screams out to everybody in the big lake that he's the prince of the planet or something like that?
I don't know where you come up with this stuff. First off, it was the Titanic.
Titanic?
Okay, not the Poseidon.
Not the Poseidon.
Okay, it was on the Atlantic. And not on a lake. And he screams out, "I'm king of the world, not I'm prince of the planet."
Yeah, it's pretty close. And he did make all those goofy paintings way back when as well, right?
What are you talking? You're talking about Leonardo da Vinci, Bill.
Oh,
this is Leonardo DiCaprio.
All right, at least you got the Leonardo part right. And now it's time for us to call it a wrap on the Thursday edition of the Big News Roundup. And before we go, as we do each and every day here on the program, we share with you a very notable quote. And these inspiring words come to us today from J.R.R. Tolkien, who said, "Not all those who wander are lost." Tolkien was a legendary British writer who's best known for his classic novel, The Hobbit, and, of course, that magnificent achievement, The Lord of the Rings, which I think is a movie about a guy who ran some jewelry store. Something about rings. And now it's time for us to bust on out. But before we go, don't forget the News Roundup motto. Ask not what your podcast can do for you. Ask what you can do for your podcast. And we don't ask much. We just ask you to hit that subscribe button right over there. And that way you never miss even a single episode. And if you don't mind, we'd greatly appreciate it if you'd hit up a friend or two, a family member, a coworker, anybody you got, ask them to subscribe to the channel as well. And yeah, now it looks like our time, it's officially up, so have an awesome day today. Please stay safe. Let's all continue to watch out for one another. And with that, we're going to dim the lights, finally fade to black. It's almost a Friday, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow afternoon.